Welcome back to another episode of the Afterburners podcast. I am your host, Sam Niedermeyer. With me, as always, the lovely co-host, Bobby Koch. Bobby, how are you this evening?
Doing all right. Made a good amount of my league's playoffs, so pretty happy about that.
Yeah, I understand you're in 3.
Well, I made 3 playoffs. The one that I didn't make was the one we're all in together. So,
And you could go on and on about the point differential and stuff like that for one of the other leagues.
no, I actually made it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, only
So
because
all of that was for naught.
Yeah, only because Joe Mixon got hurt. Otherwise, I probably would have been fucked.
Thank you, Joe Mixon. And with us,
we don't celebrate injuries on this
we'll
pod.
get to that part later on. And with us from Canada, Mr. Mike Jarvis. Mike, what is shaking up north?
Not much. I wasn't as fortunate to make the playoffs in a lot of leagues. I made it in 2 out of 5. I would have made it in 3 out of 5 had the phantom hold that negated A.J. Green's 3rd touchdown stood. I lost by 8 points and got eliminated from the playoff contention, even though I had the 4th most points in the league. But that's another story.
So, see, in our league, you were what, the 2 seed or the 1 seed?
The number 1.
You didn't know. Well, obviously.
That's not some story here.
Little fun story if you're to all those listening out there. Mike and I are usually on the same page with a lot of things when football's happening. We're usually joking around a lot in the same like fantasy football tweet chat that we have, and it's usually like the league, the league, like it's kind of turning into that at one point.
Yep.
Yeah, it stopped being like that.
Yeah, well,
it should get back to that. It was more fun when it was like that.
I think it's like off-season shit, right?
Yeah,
like
we had nothing else to do, so we just that's true. It's off-season.
Mike and I are usually on the same page, and on Monday night, he and I were I think it was more so on me, John at each other. Well, actually, I was just yelling at you because I'm a huge Steelers fan, and I was very upset. 1, with the Ryan Shazier thing going on, and 2, just I hate the Bengals. Like I was like, so I was pretty salty. So let me apologize to you.
You weren't pretty salty. That was probably the saltiest I've ever seen Sam in my time knowing him.
Yeah,
just your amount of shade he was throwing at pretty much anyone who so much as blinked at him.
Yeah, you were pretty salty. It's all good, buddy. Let the record be known, I don't actually like the Bengals. I just fucking wanted AJ Green points or no Le'Veon Bell points. So that's all I was rooting for.
No, I get it. 100%. I get it.
It's tough when you're rooting for fantasy interest and someone's just a raging homer.
Yeah, but I mean, it's all good, buddy. No ill will.
And good news, we understand that Ryan Shazier came away as very, very, it looked really bad. I don't know if you guys saw it. It looked really, really bad in terms of long-term potential for not only playing, but maybe even walking. We understand it's just a spinal contusion. We're all very happy by that. So never want to see a guy get injured the way that he was.
From the sports doctors I follow, too, it seems like the spinal contusion that he had, there was such a small chance of that happening that the sports doctor likened it to completing a Hail Mary.
Oh, shit.
So he basically said this guy is one of like the luckiest sports injury cases he's ever seen. So very happy to hear that news. Glad that he's on his way to recovery.
Yeah, and as a fan of Ryan Shazier, and I don't know if you guys ever read the Players Tribune. He kind of adds some stuff in there. Now, granted, they're all probably like ghostwriters or whatever, but I actually like what some of the stuff is that he writes in the Players Tribune. Mike, you read the Players Tribune?
Not for football, but for hockey, I do.
Well, naturally, you got the Red Wings. By the way, did you like my tweet I threw at you earlier today?
That was good. I read that when I was having my breakfast, so it started the day off with a good laugh.
And speaking of Twitter, what's your Twitter handle, Mike, so everyone can get started and follow you and we can get started with the show?
Yeah, you guys can find me at Mike Jarvis.
Bobby?
I'm at Wrecked Fantasy. That's REKED Fantasy.
And he's writing articles over at DL Football.
DLF
Football. Clearly, I'm still in my prime.
Well, it's not even I guess it is DLF Football. Oh, yeah. F stands for football, though. In case you're ever curious, DLF.
I know there's a football in
Dynasty
the tag.
League football.
I mean, thank you. I'm pretty sure, but I know there's a football in the
I
tag.
wasn't sure. It just seemed like you were confused there for a second.
I'm confused about a lot of things. What I'm not confused about, though, is my Twitter handle. That's at the Needy One, guys. We got a lot to talk about. Playoffs are here. They are in They are starting. We got a few things we're going to go over in terms of playoffs. We're going to talk about do you want to get cute at this time of the year? Stick with your strategy. Also, what do you do when you talk about who you're going to start? Do you start somebody that's potentially a quarterback, like a wide receiver whose quarterback's going against you, or vice versa? We're going to talk about that and finally some Giovanni Bernard stuff. And as always, our afterburns of the week. Talked earlier about it being fantasy playoff time. One of the things that we came up earlier today, Bobby, we were talking about like starting players based on what the other team is starting. So, for instance, the situation you're talking about is, do I start Drew Brees or Alex Smith? Talk into a little bit why you wouldn't start one or the other. What was the situation going on?
So I have the choice in my league. I wish I had better choices. It's the one league where I don't have a bye. Drew Brees, as everybody knows, has not been the typical Drew Brees of the past. The Saints' run game is too strong, so he's not getting the points he usually gets. Alex Smith has been up and down, but I noticed my opponent is starting Tyreek Hill, and this is something that Mike and I were talking about earlier, but I actually believe in starting your quarterback when the other person has the wide receiver, and part of the reason is it caps the points, and this is actually a strategy. I know he's not considered a great strategist or smart person in general, but speaking of the league, that was my introduction to fantasy. And someone who took that strategy was Taco, but it was smart Taco. It was Taco when he stopped smoking. And he said, I'm going to play my kicker on the same team of your quarterback. So anytime your quarterback gets points, I'm getting some points for my kicker when he's scoring those field goals or, the extra points. And so I know
Mike could be field goals too if they don't sustain a drive.
And I know Mike's point was, I believe, something to the effect of, and I'm just making these numbers up, but, if Tyreek Hill has an 125-yard game and 2 touchdowns, he's going to have substantially more points than Smith. But it's not necessarily about that. It's about Tyreek Hill is a boom or bust guy. So let's say he has another boom game where he has like 33 points. If I start Alex Smith, I mitigate some of that so that instead of having a deficit of 20 or more points potentially, anytime he's getting those touchdowns, Alex Smith is also getting 6 points. So the hole that I have to cover with my other guys is then lesser.
But is this like in a league? I know a lot of like leagues play like rather than a touchdown being 6 for a passing touchdown, it's like 4 points.
I think the passing touchdowns are still pretty high. I'm not sure though.
Mike, I know you got some beef with not beef, but some varying different points on what Bobby's saying. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the name of the game is fantasy. You want to maximize your potential for points, and so I don't have a big of a beef with it if you're starting, say, the receiver, and the opposition starting the quarterback, because then you're still coming out ahead by a substantial margin. But if you're starting the quarterback and your opponent has the receiver, to me, that's just foolish. Unless you don't have, a better option. But I mean, for standard leagues, you get 1 point for every 10 yards, and then probably a half a point for a reception, and 6 points for a receiving touchdown. So, for the quarterbacks, it's only 1 point for every 25 yards. I mean, I throw a pass to Bobby for 25 yards. Whoever has Bobby on his fantasy team is looking at 3 points now. Whereas if you've got me on your fantasy team, you've got 1. So now you're in a 2-point hole. You want your quarterback to get points. It sucks when you're like, oh shit, yeah, there's a sweet 60-yard completion. Ah, fuck. To Antonio Brown, my opponent has him. Like, to me, you've erased all the good that your quarterback just did, and you're still playing catch-up.
Well, that only makes sense too if it's like 2 quarterbacks that you could probably start, right? Like if it's like your quarterback is like Russell Wilson and your backup is like, I don't know,
Josh McCown.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but
yeah. Well, depending on the matchup, I don't know. McCall's he's sneaky good.
I mean, I get your point. If you say you've got Russ Wilson or Alex Smith, then you're like, well, I'm probably going to start Russ Wilson even if my opponent has Baldwin. But if You've got Russ Wilson. Sorry, that I said that wrong. If you've got Russ Wilson and say Trubisky, and your opponent has Baldwin, you're definitely starting Russ Wilson.
Yeah.
But if you've got, say, Russ Wilson and Josh McCown, perfect example. Depending on the matchup, I really might look at Jordan McCown just so you can optimize your point potential. It's the same reason why I don't like starting 2 wide receivers on a team or a wide receiver and a tight end. You can only score 1 touchdown on a play. So if you got 2 wide receivers, you're fucked, basically. You're getting half the potential points that you could. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, the counter to that, though, is sometimes it's not about scoring the most points you can. Sometimes it's about making sure your opponent doesn't score more points than you, which is the point of minimizing your potential damage, so that if Tyreek Hill has a huge game, but you're starting Alex Smith, then the point differential is not as big as, let's say, I start Drew Brees, he puts up a clunker, Hill goes off, suddenly I'm down 33 points. Also, this past week, for example, Hill actually had 33 points, and Alex Smith outscored him, because in a game where Hill actually had 165 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Smith hit Kelsey for 2 other touchdowns in that game.
Well, he ran for a 70-yard score, too.
And he ran for 70 yards, but he did end up actually outscoring him. If you subtract the 70 yards, he probably would have ended up being 3 points less than Hill. But the point is that instead of being down potentially 33 points because Hill had a blow-up game and Brees shat the bed in this hypothetical scenario, which may or may not happen, you're only down a certain amount and you make it up with other players at other positions. So maximizing points, yes, but there's no difference between winning by 1 point and winning by 100 points. Right. So in this case, you're going for the win of, hey, I'm capping my opponent's maximum points. It's not necessarily, it's a war of attrition, basically. It's not like I'm going to go all out and blow you away. It's I'm going to limit your ability to blow me away.
Right. I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from. But, if you aren't, the way I look at it, if you're not able to get your maximum points, then you're probably going to lose. I mean, sometimes you don't have a better option, and that's fine. But when I'm setting my rosters, if I've got a somewhat decent option, I'm going to take the somewhat decent option that doesn't include my quarterback and his wide receiver.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because it kind of goes into our next topic is, at what point should you get cute or should you be consistent? Now, Bobby, it seems like you guys make both great arguments in terms of starting the quarterback versus the wide receiver, but at some point it also could be a combination of thinking too much and starting to get cute. For me, it's funny because I'm with Mike on this one, but then when I'm thinking about a fantasy matchup in the playoffs, I'm like, oh, I'm overthinking oh, this doesn't seem consistent with what I've been doing all year, because we're so close in terms of do you want to get cute and go complete upside, which is what I usually end up doing and never win, or do you want to stay consistent and get the quote unquote safe points? What do you think, Bobby? When you shape your roster and you see who's starting and versus who's on the bench, do you do consistency? You do upside? What?
I think it all depends on play style. And I think that's ultimately what Mike and I were just talking about. So I like to mitigate risk at pretty much anywhere I can, because I think it gives me the greatest chance to win. I'm not necessarily going for a kill shot. I'm going for guys who I know will safely get me consistent points. I'm also going for any ways I can to mitigate my opponent's upside. So I think that's part of where it comes from. But, another thing is, it obviously depends on matchups and other factors. And in this particular case, normally I probably would be starting Drew Brees, except that I think that the run game in New Orleans has killed Brees' value, where if you're counting on him for more than 14 or 15 points in a week, you're probably wrong at this point. And Smith has been able to do that more often than not. Lately, he's been not on a great run, but last week he was great, and his offense wasn't the problem. So when you're talking about getting cute, I know we were talking about this earlier. I think it was Brad Evans at Yahoo Noise, who I happen to like a lot just because, regardless, I know he gets a lot of flack on Twitter.
He gets a ton of flack on
But
Twitter.
I like him because he stirs the pot. He has a personality, which I can't necessarily say of everybody. He at least shows.
Not even me?
I mean, you definitely have a personality.
Not even Mike?
You guys have personality. I'm not going to start naming names of people that I think don't have personality. But at the very least, he shows something different than just the same reporting the news or saying this player over this player. He puts his own little flair on it, and I respect that. But he was saying that he would start Josh McCown this week over Russell Wilson. And I know Wilson is playing the Jaguars. I know McCown's playing Denver, which has been terrible lately. My whole thing is like the talent level's just not the same. At a certain point, matchups matter. But at the same time, if the talent level's not the same, you really have to consider, am I getting too cute here? And am I getting too cute when losing means that I'm out for the season?
Yeah, I agree to an extent. Perfect example, last week I needed a win to ensure myself the number one seed in the top record. So I have 3 quarterbacks on my team: Drew Brees, Dak Prescott, and Josh McCown. Obviously, I can only start 2. And as a Saints fan, I'm never going to sit Brees. Even though I seriously debated it a couple times this year. Bobby, I know I had a couple conversations with you about it. And so then I sat there and thought, well, shit, do I play Dak or do I play McCown? So ultimately I sat there and I thought, well, Dak's been kind of down since Zeke's been out and McCown's been tearing it up. And so Dak had like 14.8 points. And on a Thursday night, I'm like, shit. Did I make a mistake? Because that's been Dak's best game since Zeke's been out. And then McCown went off for 32 points or whatever it was, and I was laughing. So it gets to a point where I kind of agree that, matchups don't matter to an extent. But at the same time, if I have somebody who has what I see as a fairly similar, like maybe when you look at their baseline, if their baseline for a quarterback is, 15 points, we'll say, and option A is Drew Brees against Atlanta, or option B is, we'll just say Dak right now. I don't know who the Cowboys play this week off the top of my head.
They're playing the Giants.
The Giants.
Demon.
I would probably default to Brees on that, just because I think the Saints-Falcons game has a higher point total. And so I think that Brees is probably going to have to throw more to keep up with the Falcons than Dak will have to do to keep with the Giants. And so, I guess in that situation, I would lean, the safer play. But I also looks at I take a look at my opponent's roster, and I think, am I probably projected to be the underdog here, and by how much? If it's pretty even, I think, okay, this guy's going to get this, blah blah blah. And if I think we're probably going to end up the same, then I'll take the safer play. But if I look at his roster, he's got stud, 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 average, stud, stud. And I look at mine, I've got average, 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 stud. And I've got a guy like, we'll say McCown, who would have a juicy matchup. Or, a guy like Russ Wilson, who has a tougher matchup. And if I'm the heavy underdog, I'm playing McCown for the potential points.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like you gotta like do some type of projections on your end too, right? So it's not just you're not just your players that you're projecting that are gonna go well, but whoever you're playing, you have to look at them and say like, all right, like this guy's been doing this all years. And if you're on Yahoo actually does it for you. Like I think
you shouldn't trust those projections.
Yeah, but you know what? There's like a baseline there, right? Like it's not like that's what the be all end all. But you can get smart around that. You can say like Kirk Cousins is probably projecting to be 18, but Yahoo's not taking into effect that he's playing behind a complete decimated offensive line, right? Yeah. And Josh McCown continually gets underperformed on Yahoo too as well. So you can see that using Josh McCown might not be the best example because he's actually been very fantasy relevant, especially these last like 6 weeks. Year. Like he's been great, and he's got my man Robbie Anderson. Excuse me, Bobby's man Robbie Anderson. But yeah, true story. I do have Robbie Anderson. He'd be my man.
He'd be more of my man if his name was Bobby Anderson. He really screwed up. He's a great football player as Robbie Anderson. He would be a Hall of Fame football player if his name was Bobby Anderson.
Also, one last point I want to look at or touch on when we're talking about matchups, especially this time of year. I don't know how the weather down there is for you guys, but I'm
30 degrees. It's freezing.
Yeah, it's pretty cold today.
Yeah, it's fucking cold here today too. If I'm especially for quarterbacks and for wide receivers, if I'm trying to debate between a quarterback and quarterback A and quarterback B, and I look at the forecast, and quarterback A's got a fucking blizzard going on in MetLife, and quarterback B is, playing down in the Dome or out in the West Coast. I'm going quarterback B.
Yeah, there are a lot of factors that matter. I'm just saying that we, as a collective, overestimate our ability to think, okay, this matchup's going to impact this player by this much, or this weather condition is going to impact by this much. We all assume we know exactly what's going to happen, and there have been stats and research to show that the matchups may not matter as much as we think they do. They definitely do matter. For example, I have Devin Funchess this week, or however it's pronounced. Maybe it's Funkus. I don't know.
I think you're mispronouncing it. That's on brand.
Yeah, that is on brand. But, he's playing the Vikings. He's the number one option for Carolina, so he's probably going to be shadowed by Xavier Rhodes. And I don't want to play him against Rhodes. I know that much, because if Julio Jones can't produce against Rhodes, why do I think Funchess is going to produce against
Rhodes? Marvin Jones did on Thanksgiving.
That's true. But Marvin Jones is just a great player. People just need to accept that now.
Right. So, getting back to the matchups, last week in the league that I got eliminated in, I had the choice between Stephon Diggs against the Falcons, the true fontless Falcons, or Sammy Watkins, who was going to be shadowed by Peterson. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go Diggs in this. I think it's a better matchup. Sure enough, Diggs shit the bed, had 2 grabs for like 32 or 34 yards or whatever. And Sammy had, I think, 60 or 70 yards and a touchdown. If I play Sammy, I also make the playoffs in that league. So
yeah, that's my point, though, is that we as a community tend to overthink everything and overestimate our own ability to know how certain factors will impact the game.
Well, yeah, none of us have any actual ability. That's why we're sitting here in our apartments and our houses, and we're not in the fucking war room of an NFL stadium making these decisions.
How do you know I'm not part of the war room?
I will have you know that I am at my office right now.
I can live in Bobby's apartment.
I will also have you know I'm part of the war room. Like, whenever the Giants want to make a draft pick from now on, I didn't tell you guys this. I was waiting until this podcast. But from now on, whenever the Giants make a draft pick, they have to call me first, at least until they hire a new GM. So if a new GM is not hired before the draft, I will be acting as the interim GM for the Giants in terms of their draft.
Congratulations, buddy.
But actually,
when do you get that giant check?
Never. In case anybody takes me seriously, I have nothing to do with it, because I'm sure the Giants will fuck up their pick, and then everyone will be mad, and I'll get a bunch of angry tweets remembering from our 2 listeners going, Bobby, you said you were responsible for the picks. I wasn't, but I wish I was.
Yeah, we're all just a bunch of fucking jabronis.
Yeah. We're all just a bunch of jabronis. You know who else is a jabroni? It's Giovanni Bernard, at least in my opinion, because he plays for the Bengals. However, it's an interesting question because he has obviously just completely blew up this week in terms of roster ads, at least in Yahoo leagues. And he's taking over for Mixon, who I believe, Mike, you reported, quote unquote. You told me that Mixon will be out on Sunday. Is that correct?
I've read that it's looking likely that Joe Mixon is out. He's still in concussion protocol. It's already Wednesday. He hasn't been cleared yet, hasn't practiced yet this week. That's a pretty good sign to me that he's going to be out. Also, even if he is cleared or can play, I don't expect a very full workload. The Bengals have nothing to play for this year after that fucking epic collapse on Monday night. So I think they probably want to be pretty careful with their young stud running backs. So even if Joe Mixon does play this week, I don't expect much from him. So Bernard would probably get more touches, even if Mixon's.
I think the question, you still have to kind of pose this question. I could see him not doing quote unquote well. But you have to imagine that he's going to have, Giovanni Bernard's going to have a giant workload, because I can't think of even a running back that would be able to play behind him unless it's somebody from practice squad, right? So you have to imagine that the carries and the volume is going to be there, right?
Exactly. It's some jabroni I've never heard his name of. They talked about it on.
Jabroni is an apt word to put it.
Yeah, they talked about it on Monday night during the telecast, and I consider myself fairly knowledgeable. I'm like, yep, I've never heard of this guy.
Yeah, but you know what? John Gruden was calling Juju Smith-Schuster JoJo. I mean, I don't really. Gruden, I used to like you, but man, come on, you're really starting to go a little senile.
So
should on Giovanni Bernard here. What are we doing with him?
I can't remember the exact stat that I looked up, but I think it was a Kareem Hunt related one of yards from scrimmage in your rookie season since 1920, and he was one of I want to say 29 running backs to do it. One of the other more recent options was Giovanni Bernard. So people forget that he was very, very good in his rookie season.
I remember what your stat was. Your stat was X amount of running yards and X amount of receiving yards in your rookie year. And yeah. I believe it was 500 and 300 or something like that, right?
I think it's 500. So it might have been Alvin Kamara. Anyway,
definitely.
The point is that Giovanni Bernard had a very good rookie year. He had been a very good receiving back, pretty much underrated receiving back in the league until this year when Mixon came in, and then Jeremy Hill was still relevant for whatever reason. This past week when Mixon went down, Bernard rushed for 77 yards, and he added another 19 yards on catches, and that wasn't even a full game of starting. So before writing him off, I just keep in mind that he has been a good player in the past, and he can be, I believe, a good player going forward. I'm not saying he's going to suddenly come in and be this great RB1, but he's certainly flex worthy. He might even be a low to mid RB2 in most leagues.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, especially this week, they're going against the Bears, who are mid-pack on the defense. I went and looked to play Bernard next week against the Vikings. But then in week 16, if I'm still alive and need him, and if Mixon's hurt still, gets the Lions, and the Lions have gotten shredded lately because, well, they're fucking terrible.
They're the Lions.
I disagree. I might actually play him against the Vikings, only because I could very easily see the Bengals being behind in that game and having to throw a lot of screens. So if you're in a 0.5 PPR or PPR league, he could establish flex value again.
Yeah, that Vikings defense is just fucking legit, though. Like you said, I expect the Bengals to be behind in that game, but I don't know. I watched a few Vikings games as the season's gone on because the Saints are battling with them, and that defense is no joke, to say the least. The Purple People Eaters are back.
Yeah, and primarily, though, you'd have to think that they'd be covering A.J. Green to a huge extent, and Rhodes will clearly be on Green.
Oh, for sure.
And they still have to cover some of the other guys. So my point is that when they're covering those guys, it might open up some of the coverage for underneath stuff to Bernard. I'm not saying he's going to have a huge game, but if you're in any kind of league that counts points per reception or half points, you could easily get at least low-end flex value just by catching a few things and running it for 2 yards before they stop him.
Oh, for sure. I mean, a lot of it would be garbage time, but hey, garbage time wins championships. I've said it for years.
Yep. Just ask Blake Bortles almost taking me out of the playoffs last week.
Yeah, ask Drew Brees for the last 4 years. Drew Brees thrived in garbage time.
Yeah, well, that's the consistency in terms of quarterbacks is great offense plus bad defense.
Yep, absolutely. One last Brees thought that I want to touch on this week. You said the running game has killed his value. I don't expect it, but Ingram has shown up on the injury report the last 2 days, or 3 days rather, with a toe injury. Hasn't practiced yet this week. They've got that Thursday night game against Atlanta this week. If for whatever reason Ingram can't go, I think we'll see an uptick in Brees, maybe another 4 to 7 passing attempts that we haven't necessarily gotten from him this year.
All I'm hearing is Alvin Kamara is going to have a 300-yard game.
There's a good chance of that, but I don't know.
I'm interested to see how Kamara does without Ingram. They remind me a little bit because Ingram's a very violent runner. He'll run. Don't get me wrong, he's very skilled too, and he's able to put a move on. But he's not afraid to deliver a hit. It was Kamara's very very smooth, always going out to the outside. I'm interested to see how that will affect him with no Melvin Ingram. Sorry, Mark Ingram. Sorry. I always got South Carolina on my mind, so I'm thinking Melvin Ingram when he's defensive lineman for South Carolina.
Right. Oh, for sure. I mean, I'll say this.
Gamecocks. Gamecocks. He played.
No, but he's on the Chargers now, I think.
Well, yeah, but I always know him as a Gamecock, playing with Jadeveon Clowney.
Anyways, Kamara at the start of the year was more, bouncing to the outside, getting that screen pass, and that's still where his value lies. The last month or so, he has been hitting the hole harder, just trying to take on that front 7 or 8, and he's really grown as a runner. I saw a stat the other day on Twitter where I think he's 3rd in the league in forced miss tackles this year, behind I think it was Zeke and Hunt. That's some pretty good company right there.
Well, I don't know, Mike. I've seen about 0 Saints games this year, and from the 3 highlights I've seen from them too, everything tells me that what you just said is wrong. And obviously, you watch Saints games every week, so I don't know who knows what they're talking about in this situation.
I mean, I am a jabroni, but I have watched every Saints game this year. So,
by the way, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, I don't know if you're trying to figure out the shirt that Mike is wearing, but I've been trying to figure it out the entire show. For a second, and maybe it's because I, was drinking it when I was playing skee ball before this and having Heinekens right now. But I was thinking it was like a tuxedo T-shirt. I would have thought, man, that's awesome. But I see now I have no idea what the fuck it is.
So, I'll tell you, I actually do have a tuxedo T-shirt. Maybe I'll wear that for next week.
I'm the type of man that would have a tuxedo T-shirt. I know because I have one too.
I've actually broken it out at a few weddings as well. It's classy as fuck. But anyway, this is a band hoodie from a Canadian hardcore emo band called Silverstein. It's about 10 years old, this hoodie, give or take. It's got a bleeding heart on it, and on the back it says, "My heart bleeds no more."
Wait, what band? What, your band?
No, I wish. It's a band called Silverstein.
Oh, okay.
So if you're into angry emo punk rock,
fun fact, I am not.
Check that. I'm just saying for our listeners, check them out. Great band, Silverstein.
There's probably a big correlation between liking football and liking angry emo music.
We got to do some type of study on that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we really should. I realize the correlation probably won't end well in the angry punk rock favor, but hey, I'm into it, and maybe some other people will be as well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you starting the entire emo fantasy football community, Mike. I think you could be the absolute godfather in this community.
Yeah.
As it is, boys, we are running a bit out of time. We're kind of wrapping things up here, but that means that we just have extra time to do some afterburns. You got some burns this week, Mike?
I'll let one of you guys go first. I'm debating this one here for a minute.
Bobby?
Sure.
Bobby has been – we knew you had one, Bobby, and we know exactly what it is, and you guys don't yet, but he's going to unleash right now.
So this is a pretty easy one. This past week, we all saw the Bengals and Steelers play each other. It always gets pretty chippy, which is a word that I learned from my brother-in-law. He's a big hockey guy, loves to use the word chippy. Anyway, if you are the type of person that celebrates when another person gets injured, and in this case, I'm talking specifically football players, you are a piece of shit. And I know I probably just called a bunch of our listeners pieces of shit, but you deserve it. If that's the kind of behavior that you display, you're the exact kind of reason that I feel a bunch of shame when I tell people that I like the NFL, because they associate it with being a gladiator sport. And when we celebrate when someone might actually be paralyzed, I'm looking at you, Bengals fans. I saw way too many tweets about that situation. When we celebrate, when a player goes down on the field and goes, good, I hope he never fucking plays again, we are savages and no better than the Agent Romans. It's just a fucking fact. Those are people on the field. Yes, they are being paid to play. Yes, it's a contact sport, but there's no part of you that should be celebrating an injury in any regard. Earlier, we mentioned that I made a fantasy playoff because Joe Mixon happened to get concussed and it stopped any comeback chance for my opponent. Did I feel good about that? No. It actually fucking soured the whole thing for me, where I was so prepared to talk a bunch of shit with him, and then the whole night I just felt bad that that was the way I made it in. I'm not saying that I'm better than you because I haven't celebrated injuries, but you really shouldn't do it. It's just gross, and it's why people aren't letting their kids play football anymore. That and a bunch of other reasons, but I'm tired of telling people I'm a fan of the NFL and feeling gross about it because of people like you.
That's deep stuff. I actually agree with you too. I'm going to go a little bit of a different route. I got burned specifically for the guy in your league. I'm saying your as in the encompassing your, not either of yours or any of our listeners. The guy in your league that makes a waiver wire move but is not involved in the playoffs. Dude, if you're not in the playoffs, get off the waiver wire. Don't touch it. Let the people who are in the playoffs make a move. And I'm not talking about like constellation, like bracket.
Are you talking about Dynasty? Because in Dynasty, it makes sense for them to still be involved. Yeah. I'm just curious.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I was not talking about Dynasty. But if you're like in a
redraft leagues, okay.
If you're in a redraft league and you're playing around on the waiver wire, you got no business being on there, and may God have mercy on your soul.
So what Sam's saying is, I'm going out on a limb here. In the work league at the company that we both used to work in, somebody is making moves on the waiver wire when they're no longer in the playoffs, and he is burning that person.
That's a good guess.
So I'll touch on that as well. And generally, I agree, unless your league has something to play for. My league used to play for draft pick positioning. So even if you didn't make the playoffs, you still had something to play for. So, I supported, being active on the waiver wire then. But now,
if you don't have a game, like if you're out of the playoffs, it doesn't matter who, like, I don't understand that at all. Like, it doesn't matter.
What he's saying is they had toilet polls to determine who gets the overall pick.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
so you're not playing for money or
the way that what Mike's talking about is a toilet bowl for who gets the first overall pick, but it's not the loser who gets the pick. It's whoever wins the toilet bowl gets the pick. To encourage people to still be active at the end of the season.
Exactly.
Oh. Okay.
So
you guys are just picking on me now at this point.
Who I'm going to burn is, again, this probably this has nothing to do with dynasty leagues, but more so redraft leagues. If your league has a move, maximum move, and you all know it from the start of the year, whether it be 30 moves or 40 moves or 25 or whatever it is, and you run out of moves by, say, fucking week 14, and then you have the audacity to come on the fucking message board and blast the commissioner for saying, oh, what the fuck, we need more moves. I have to take a 0 this week because my guy got hurt and I don't have another fucking move to pick up a guy. No, that's on you, buddy. It may suck that, the commissioner has 30 moves or whatever it is, and they may be too low in everybody's opinion. But you fucking knew it. It's right there. I'm not the one who forced you to pick up a guy and drop him.
I made you pick up that loser you picked up in week 2.
Yeah, and then drop him 20 minutes later for some other loser. Nobody forced you to do that, guy.
Yeah. I figured you were the guy in that situation. Also, I have another one.
No, I still have, in this particular league, I still have 7 moves left as of today.
All right.
Because you know what? I can fucking do math and manage my moves.
Yeah, there you go. Mike doesn't like people who can't do math.
That's not fair, though. He's Canadian. They have a better educational system.
Yeah, that's true. You do.
Yeah, but this guy is Canadian as well, so.
Oh, all right. Well, that's on him then.
So my other one is
Sorry.
I'm going to burn myself
Okay.
because I said, I literally 2 or 3 days ago, I was talking to Zach and I said, I think I'm going to lower
At Lopsided Trades.
Yeah, at Lopsided Trades. He also writes for Dynasty League Football. And I said, I think I'm going to scale back the amount of leagues that I'm in next year. I kind of feel like I'm in too many, and it's not as fun anymore. Today, I got a DM from someone that I've been talking to.
Someone slide in your DMs?
Yeah, from someone I've been talking to for a really long time. Said, hey, me and a bunch of these other guys that you talk to regularly on Twitter forming a new league. It's a format you've never played. And it's like it's a yard per carry league. It also has T premium and all this other stuff, Dynasty. And I even said to him, I told myself I am not going to be in any more leagues. And he said, does that mean that you're out? And I said, no, fuck it, I'm in. So there you go. I burned myself because I tell myself and other people I'm not joining more leagues. And then what do? I join more leagues.
Yards per carry. That just seems confusing.
Yeah,
YPC.
I did that in baseball last year. I was like, no, I'm done. I'm not going to join any more leagues. And then I was sitting home one day bored, and I saw a post from somebody saying, hey, need a guy to draft tonight. I'm like, yeah, fuck it, I'm in.
I'm doing a hockey league, and that's way too much to keep up with. I'm in one hockey league.
You're doing well in it, though.
Am I? I was in 7th last time I saw.
I think you're in like 5th.
OVs. OV-Rees.
I know we don't have much time left, guys, but I just have a question for you. Does it get to what's your maximum like leagues? Like, would you say I'll be in 4 football leagues, I'll be in 5? Because I know we had the chat today, I think it was today or yesterday, and Ali was saying, oh no, I'll join them. And Mark actually asked me at Walt Sanity,
at Walt Sanity. That's what we have to. We were contractually obligated to mention his Twitter handle at least once per episode.
Actually asked me to join a league last year. It was like the week before the season started, and I really wanted to, but I was like, "Fuck! I'm already in 5 leagues. I can't do a 6th one."
I was at 6 last year. That was way too much. I had 4 this year, and I think that's my sweet spot.
With this new one, I'll be in 5 Dynasty leagues, maybe 6 with a redraft. I don't know. I love Dynasty. I don't know what my number is. I'm probably already in too many. I will say the only reason I'm playing, I should give them a shout out because they mentioned this podcast a lot. First is Riley. I believe his last name is Bymaster. I apologize, Riley, if I messed up your last name. But he is currently subbing in for Zach Reed on the Dynasty Dummies, which is one of the other fantasy football podcasts that I listen to regularly. And I talked to those guys, and had it not been them asking me to join, I probably would have said no, but I'm not in any leagues with them, and I'm very interested, since I do talk to them regularly, to how they actually play. So I said yes. I think that's going to be my rule. I'm not going to set a hard and fast rule about how many I'll play in. It's basically just going to be, if I think I am going to enjoy it, I will continue to do it. If I'm no longer enjoying it, though, I also will leave. I also do have one league that I co-own, which makes it a little bit easier. And another one, as Mike knows, is best ball, which means it's a little less upkeep. So that also makes it easier. I think if people approached me and said, oh, I'm starting a best ball league, I'd probably just say, yeah, screw it, I'm in, as long as I like the people in the league.
Yeah, that's legit. I wondered about that because, like, I'm in 5 this year, and I got to say, like, I enjoy it. I enjoy football. I enjoy fantasy. I enjoy talking shit and doing this podcast. But I think next year I'm going to probably chop it down to 3 or 4. I just feel like 5's too many. And it gets to the point where you're like, oh, fuck, I need 7 points from AJ Green in this league, but I need no points from AJ Green in this league. And especially at this time of year, with the holidays coming up, and if you're like me and you get really, really fucking into things, like way too into things, it just eats up too much of your time. Or
you get like 5 leagues, all of a sudden you're like, you run into that game where it's like, all right, I need AJ Green to have 4 catches, no more, no less, 63 yards and 2 touchdowns. Or he could do like 6 catches and 80 yards and 1 touchdown, because that's only 6. The 2 touchdowns only 4. It just gets like way too confusing.
Yeah, I was literally doing
that. That's a good mix between everything. I might go down to 3 next year, but I'm in 4. I think 4 is a good number.
Sometimes I miss being only in 1. I definitely felt more strongly about being only in 1, because then all your eggs are in one basket, so you're just rooting for the players that are in one league.
But, yeah, I was definitely doing that on Monday night, because I got Le'Veon Bell in our league, and I was against Le'Veon Bell in the other league. I'm like, fuck. Like, okay. I was really just hoping that he caught 1-yard screen passes all night, because I would have got, 0.6 of a point in our league. And then in the other league that I was against him, it's a non-PPR. So he would have only gotten 1/10 of a point. But
too much math, which we already realized earlier. You don't like people who do math. Or, sorry, who can't do math. So you don't like yourself is what you're really telling us right now.
Yeah, I hate myself. True story.
We love you, though, Mike, and so do all of the listeners. Give us out your final thoughts, where we can find you on Twitter, and we got to wrap it, boys.
Final thoughts. This is a non-NFL football-related thought. I just want to give a shout-out to the European football club that I support, Liverpool Football Club. I'm terrible at – yeah, you get the bit. You get the gist. Qualified for the knockout round of 16, the Champions League. First time in, years. I'm pretty fucking pumped today. And if you ever want to talk European football or NFL or baseball or hockey, you can find me on Twitter at Mike Jarvis. And over to you, Bobby.
Oh, wait. If you're listening to us on iTunes or not seeing YouTube, you completely missed Mike trying to get in the flag, the Liverpool flag. It was the shittiest camera work I've ever seen in my life.
There's a scarf as well.
YouTube awards us no points at all whatsoever. So
may God have mercy on my soul.
May God have mercy on your soul. Thanks. Go ahead, Bobby.
Final thought is interested to see what happens with the Giants. Eli is starting again. I hope they hire a good head coach. I'm not confident because I can't recall his name, but the guy they got for the special consultant recommended John Fox to the Bears.
Spagnano. I can't pronounce it.
He's a D coordinator.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the coordinator. I'm talking about the special consultant that is helping in the GM search. Anyway, yeah, that's my final thought. And also, my dog is looking derpy and cute at the same time. So there you go. I'm not going to put him on camera because he's a little camera shy, but he's looking pretty cute right now.
And guys, you can find him at Wrecked Fantasy. Also, this is at Afterburners Pod. Find us on Instagram. We're on iTunes now, so make sure you download and subscribe. And also, leave us a juicy review. Burn the shit out of us if you want, but don't leave us anything less than 5 stars. In the comments, just shit on us right there. And finally, I am at The Needy One on Twitter. You can find me over on Afterburners Podcast Twitter as well. My final thought, Ryan Shazier, great news after that devastating injury. So happy to hear that you'll be able to live a full life and be healthy. And I don't really care if you suit up another day for the Steelers. Kind of want you to, but I think it's way more important that you are 100% healthy. So looking forward to seeing you on the sidelines again. This was fun, guys. We got good luck, everyone, on your fantasy playoff games this week, Mike.
Unless you're
Bobby.
Facing one of us.
Well, yeah, if you're facing us. Wait.
In which case, fuck off.
And on that note, keep it classy, Fantasy Twitter. Until next time.
Peace.